We'll reconvene the meeting and begin with the Committee for Student Learning and Student Development, chaired by Linda McKenna.
Thank you, Chairman. We met this morning in our work group that was attended by myself and Regent Forrest and President Wooten as well. So we had a great interactive work group and asked a lot of questions, so hopefully that'll speed this along. We do have 2 minute orders and President Staker.
Good afternoon, everyone. The first minute order is 01-13. It's on the consent agenda. It's approval of an Associate of Applied Science degree in Enology and also a certificate in Enology at all the TSTC colleges. I asked Regent McKenna this morning if I could kind of talk about both of them together because they kind of go hand in hand. And of course, the second one, 02-13, is approval of an associate degree and certificate in viticulture. Enology is the science and study of all aspects of wine and winemaking. Viticulture is the science, production, and study of grapes, which deal with a series of events that are currently. We were approached at TSTC Waco a while back. We were actually working on another grant, and we were approached by a group about TSTC joining this consortium of colleges of this National Science Foundation grant, in which Missouri State is the lead college. It's made up of 17 partners across the nation that make up the consortium of colleges that fall under this NSF grant. The name of the project is VESTA, and I provided you a little handout. It's called VESTA, stands for Viticulture and Enology Science and Technology Alliance. TSTC is currently the only school of the 17, the only college of the 17 in Texas. And when you look at the data concerning these, one of the things that I really latched on to, at first I had reservations when they talk about wine, and alcohol on campus, but then when I started investigating it, I realized that other colleges are in the business, and I checked it a little bit. It's really not an issue because it's training. It's training in these 2 fields. And consequently, some of the things that I latched on to, when you look at the Texas Wine and Grape Brewers Association handout, currently Texas is America's #5 wine producer. Texas is America's #7 wine grape producer. And in 2009, $78.5 million in state and local taxes were paid by the Texas wine and wine grape industry in the state of Texas. Big revenue for the state of Texas. I'm sure all of you have read that vineyards are popping up all across the state. There's even a few now located close to Waco. And so part of getting into this, when we agreed to be, was of course we were getting funded, and it says it in the book how much we've gotten into the period and what the consequences will be. We feel like that the grant will be extended past 2015, and that hopefully we will continue to bring money in from this particular grant. The current money we're getting is helping us pay for equipment to get started. But the important thing about this one, and the reason I was so intrigued with it, it really fits our funding model to a T. Number one, there's a demand. All of the courses that make up these 2 programs, it's between 30 and 33 hours for a certificate in both of the programs, and the associates are between 60 and 63. They've all been developed. They've all been tested. And just this past year at the big conference, they went through and vetted again and had experts look at the curriculum. The big thing for us is they're all online. Anybody that's part of that consortium, those courses will transfer from one college to the other. So right now, since the courses are developed, if we had a student that decided they were going to take a course from such and such, one of the partners, and transfer it to TSTC, they can do it. So there's not a lot of development there for us to do, other than I will say that in Waco right now, we are working with our golf course and landscape management program that will house both of these programs, and developing and looking for a location and doing a soil test to set up a small vineyard there so that we can do training on campus and not have to have the training done. We have agreements, according to Vice President Sanders, with some of our local vineyards, to where we get to the hands-on part, that we form that partnership with the local vineyards, and the hands-on can take place with those until we get our own vineyard set up. And so the analogy is a little trickier, but we will have those same agreements. But our goal is to go ahead and get started this fall. Regent McKenna asked me, well, what if you have a small class and this and that? But because they're online, it makes it easier to provide than if you're looking for a regular matriculated face-to-face type course. So, we feel like we've gone through all of the steps in making sure this would be a successful program. Regent McKenna asked me, she said, Elton, do you think we'll have a rash of 18-year-olds getting into this program? Well, I'm not sure. I think we may be looking at people that want to enroll as hobbies. There may be some younger students, but there may be retirees that want to enroll in these programs. The important part is all we have to do at the location, at TSTC, regardless of the location in the system, is 25% has to be offered by the local college because of SACs and those requirements. So, having said that, the minute orders basically state that the first one, the Board of Regents approves the establishment of an AAS degree and certificate of completion in analogy at all Texas State Technical Colleges with the initial implementation at TSTC Waco. This approval is contingent upon all higher education coordinating board requirements having been met. And the same one states the same thing, the second minute order, except it is for viticulture. So, are there any questions on these 2 minute orders?
Have you actually visited with some of the vineyards, or maybe even, in Fredericksburg with some of the current?
I have been to a couple of the vineyards in Fredericksburg a couple of years ago. I have not been to the ones locally.
But you were doing research there, weren't you?
Yes, sir. I answered quite well.
Very thorough.
I said earlier, I was a little skeptical the more I looked into it, and when you saw the number of colleges involved across the nation and the demand, I guess because of work and everything, you kind of don't pay attention sometimes to that. But when I started looking at the data, Texas, it's becoming a booming business in this state, and the tax revenues generated are something that I feel like benefits us all as Texans.
Got a question in the back right there.
Yes. Vice President Sanders.
I was just going to mention that the statewide coordinator for Vesta for Texas is Evan McKibben. He is from Red Caboose Vineyards in Meridian, and part of what he's going to do is he is helping us be certain that we can make agreements with the vineyards, with the wineries, wherever we need to doing the hands-on work. He's going to help make that happen. So we actually have. He is with one of our folks from our grants office at a convention this week in St. Louis as they go over more how to make this work. But we have already had quite a bit of support from our local wineries and vineyards. And then Mr. McKibben is going to make it possible for us to get support statewide as well. It is covered under the grant.
Well, I'll add one more thing on this, and that is, this is an NSF National Center of Excellence. Being a member of a National Center of Excellence consortium is a big honor, and it gives you instant credibility nationwide in terms of the program that you have to offer, because it's the NSF funds a very high caliber curriculum development process and so forth. And they tend to fund it for about a 10-year cycle to make sure that all the schools have enough time to build their momentum in the program. So it allows us to essentially get into this without a whole lot of local money being spent. And I think that's a big advantage here.
One other thing that we discussed this morning as well, she asked me, will you be ready in the fall faculty-wise? Vice President Sanders told me that we had an instructor leave that teaches the horticulture classes, and we replaced him with a PhD in horticulture, so we should be more than ready to offer the courses and provide the needs, and that instructor have the knowledge that needs to be provided in these particular courses. We feel like it's an opportunity, certificates and degrees with as the Chancellor said, being part of the Center of Excellence, and the very little because the courses are and they're online. We can provide that at any of the colleges. Okay, if there are no further questions on that, I'll move to the reports. The first one is the Board of Regents undergraduates for volume 2012. As you can see, there are a number of graduates this time. We discussed this morning about the level of accolades that we provide these individuals because they do graduate with a perfect 4.0 GPA. We also discussed at the various locations what they do to honor those graduates. And so it's just something that is very special, I believe, to those students that have made it all the way through the rigor that we offer at TSTC and finish with that 4.0. I was informed and I started looking by Lillian Moss said that at Waco there are 3 individuals, James DeReese, that graduated with 2 AAS degrees, Stuart H. Good, that graduated with 3 AASs and 1 certificate, and Joette Holmes, the same thing, 4 awards, 3 AASs and 1 certificate. So they just decided to go through all of the multiple options in those programs and then graduate and apply all at one time for all of those awards. So are there any questions about the honor graduates? There's a variety of AAS students and certificate students that have achieved this perfect 4.0 award. Okay, if there are no questions, I will move to the TSTC Chancellor's Award for Excellence for 2013. This award was established to recognize outstanding contributions and achievements of faculty and staff who serve the students at TSTC across the system. As we discussed this morning, over the years it's also evolved on working on special projects, on converting to the new paradigm. Those individuals that have stepped up and provided that extra thrust in moving us and keeping us moving in the right direction. As you can see, looking through the SL9, 10, 11, and 12, there are 20 total recipients of the TSTC Chancellor's Award for 2012, for excellence for 2013. And so I know in discussion with the Chancellor, he is going to be meeting with all of the award winners at each of the locations and inviting those past award winners from each location to a breakfast and just personally provide that one-on-one saying, thank you for doing a great job for TSTC. So I think that's, our employees love that, and they deserve it. They deserve that special recognition.
Do we have any present today?
Do we have any award winners today?
And they'll be introduced at the full board meeting.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on the Chancellor Award winners from 2013? We can now move on to SL13 student data. And there's a couple of slides here that talk about review on student data, and it talks about the enrollment trends at each of the locations, and it talks about graduates fiscal year, and the third one is system headcount and placement trends. And I think to sum up, instead of trying to just go through all of them and look at where we're headed and what we're doing, we're in that cycle right now where everybody is focusing on the new funding model. And you know, and whether it's the new funding model or not, completion is a big one. I mean, it's the accountability. everybody in the system is regrouping, prepared. When you look at the next two slides on SL 17, where it says report on activities versus results. We've discussed that many times where it's not about activities, it's not about contact hours, it's not about keeping those students at the location or in college as long as possible. It's about, not activities, it's about outcomes and output. When you look at SL 18, you can see though in the blue, even though the enrollments are down, look at awards. Look at the awards. We are headed in the right direction as a system by making sure that we are going to improve our completion and our placement rates as we move forward. I think that's not only key for TSTC, but I think it's key for everybody. When you look at the next slide on SL 19, it talks about the transition from activity to output. This is one that shows technical contact hours versus awards. The contact hours are down, but the awards are up. And that's the important part. It's not about activity. And you've heard me say this many times before, while we were on contact hours, as president, my job was to get as many students in and hold them there as long as possible. It's not that way anymore, which is good. It fits our mission on getting them in, getting them out in the shortest amount of time, and putting them in the workforce. So we are, based on those graphs, we are headed in the right direction. Any questions or concerns?
Those are some great charts, those last two. Mike Reeser sent us a note saying that it's analogous to getting your costs down and your profits up. I thought that was pretty neat.
We have we didn't include the 12 numbers in this chart because they're not yet certified by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. The numbers come from us, they go to the coordinating board looks them over and then says, yeah, these look right to us, and that means they're certified. Based on our internal numbers that aren't certified yet, those trends you see where our activities continue to decline but our output continues to go up, continued in 2012. Same trends. Now, in the long term, enrollment won't fall forever. I mean, that's just not going to happen. And because eventually then that would drag down the red line. Contact hours won't fall forever, but the truth is we'll reach a point in the next few years where we may not even be measuring them. We may not even capture them and send them upstream. But enrollment and output will have a relationship, and we'll find a new equilibrium where we're doing a better job of that. And so what you see in the blue line of enrollment falling right now is us stopping the extraordinary Herculean effort of giving everybody, as the North Carolina governor calls it, every butt in the seat. Because what we find is that we actually have better throughput when we don't follow those Herculean efforts. But it only makes sense because we're not paid for them in the first place, starting there. So.
And Chancellor, that brings me to the point. When you look at a lot of those numbers, a lot of those, particularly for Waco, were the onesies and twosies and dual credit, which we will not get funded for anymore. I pulled the numbers to bring to the meeting because over the last year and a half, 2 years, unless we can come up with a plan for the high schools of getting those students a certificate by the time they get out of high school or close enough to where they maybe need 1 or 2 courses in TSTC, we got out of that business. We weren't making anything. You're not going to get paid for it. So we have been working, especially in UCheck and in the Waco area, of working with the superintendents to build curriculum for students in a morning group and an afternoon group that can put a program together to have a level 1 certificate by the time they graduate high school. As Dr. Maldonado said here in the Valley with the academic programs, we have students down here graduating with an associate. That's the key. And so when I looked at our dual enrollment numbers at Waco while we're trying to to get everything lined out for September. In spring of 2012, we had 425 dual credit students. This spring of 2013, we have 89, because we're phasing out of that business and transitioning in to, well, when you think about it, it's for the best. It's not just about the funding. It's not about the funding. It's about what's good for the students. If they can graduate with a level 1 certificate when they leave high school and have the option of going to work, we're all winners. We're all winners.
And by the way, when we forego that sort of thing like dual credit, it goes directly to the community college next door. Those students aren't dropped in the grease. They continue to get the classes they're seeking. It's just that the community colleges will be paid for those contact hours and we won't. So that everybody's a winner in those situations. But my point was, I think you'll see these lines diverge for maybe another year or so, and then you'll start to see the enrollment part level off. I think eventually, as the new funding formula and the rapid deployment strategies kick in, we'll see that start kicking up and headed back up again. But we'll have a much stronger throughput margin. We'll be able to, we'll do just a way better job of getting students through and to a job than we are right now, because of the shift from results, from enrollment to results.
And I will tell you, in my Vice Chancellor role and working with the Vice Presidents for Student Learning, I will tell you they are very creative and very innovative in working with their faculty and staff and putting processes in place that will hopefully increase our completion rates dramatically. So I'm very, very pleased with what I'm saying with them, because they get together, they share ideas, pick best practices, and move in that direction. And that's what it's all about. Thank you.
Sure. So we're currently on butts in seats.
Well, that's changing as we speak. The answer is SB1 that came out a couple weeks ago was based on contact hours. But what we found out from dialogue with the LBB is that if you look at higher ed, all three of them are based on the old model, but the co-board has the templates for accountability that the legislature asked for, and it was the intent that they would then install those through the course of the session. Just this morning, the LBB was directed to redo our recommendation based on the new funding formula as opposed to the contact hours that SB1 is based on right now. So what we expect is the current recommendation out of the LBB will come out and the new results base will go in. And if
right this
yes, for this session, so that starting in September we'll be funded on on our results and not on contact hours.
I was thinking in the meantime, if our enrollment's gone down like it has that financially impacted our revenue?
It would if we were to continue to be funded on contact hours. But I can tell you, there's never guarantees in the legislature, but I couldn't be more confident that that's going to happen. And the reason is not only our delegation in the legislature, but most of the members of the committees that really make decisions regarding higher ed funding are all in favor of us switching to this model.
Thank you, Linda. Our next committee will be Human and Organizational Development, chaired by Joe Hearne.
Brother Chairman, we met this morning with most of our members. The time is 12:26. We met this morning with most of our members. A couple of our members are chairs of other committees, but they were working, so I excused them from my meeting. We had 5 minute orders, and we had 2 reports, which Gail will go over in detail. Some of the highlights of our meeting is that we got an update on the activity in Arlington HR One of the key points of that presentation was they have instituted a program called Legal Shield and Identity Theft and Legal Assistance, which I thought was impressive for the students and the faculty. And they implemented safety ID cards to make safety reporting easier for anyone. So if you see an accident or you want to report an accident, you just take your little badge and there you go. And you can report that safety incident, which I thought was impressive. We went over a couple of process maps, which the team has process mapped how to resolve a complaint or a grievance, making it user-friendly for someone who has a problem. We talked about the cost of workman's compensation claims, and then we talked about average employee count and turnover on a voluntary basis. So we had a very productive meeting this morning, and the HR organization is moving ahead. Now Gail will give you an update on the minute orders and the reports.
Thank you, Reeser. First item, we have minute order 03-13C. I respectfully request to pull that from your agenda for consideration at this point. That holiday schedule needs to be vetted a little bit further. As you can tell, it's listed for fiscal year 2015, so we have plenty of time to make sure that it works with our academic calendar and registration dates and things like that. So I would ask that we pull that. Next up is, any questions on that? Next up is minute order 04-13C, policy for civil rights protections and compliance. And that is, you might recall, our TWC audit that was on the books for several years that has been cleared. And this is just cleaning up, making a final revision, putting us into complete compliance with new legislature. In particular, we added the words genetic information. It is a policy of Texas State Technical College to promote and ensure equal employment opportunities for all individuals without regard to race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, genetic information, disability, or veteran status. So we're just getting into compliance with this particular unit order. And I explained to Regent Hearne that in upcoming board meetings, we will be going through and POD will be revising some of these SOSs. So you should see continual improvement on these things as we go forward in further board meetings. Any questions on that? Next up is minute order 05-13C, policy for conflict resolution, complaints grievance. This particular policy has been vetted through a working group, which consisted of representatives from each college across the system. And basically what we've done here is try to streamline the process for our employees and be able to provide timely resolution for their complaints and basically move the process quicker for our folks. And as I said, it has been vetted through the working groups from across the system. Questions on that? Minute order 06-13C, policy for employee corrective action. In this particular policy, what we're doing here is our previous, we had two policies. We have one for contract and one for non-contract. And what we're doing here is streamlining it into one policy so that all employees go through the same process. It just makes it simpler, cleaner, so that we don't have two different processes to manage. And the recommended order is, it is a policy of Texas State College that all employees shall maintain standards of conduct and performance established by the college, and that any non-compliance with these standards will be subject to corrective action. Questions on that? And then the last minute order is just basically rescinding the old SOSs, and it's minute order 07-13C. And as you can see, the minute orders are 96-02, non-contract, non-faculty employee performance improvement process. Conflict resolution 97-02. Minute order 104-89, discipline, dismissal, and grievances of contract and faculty employees. Questions, I'll move on to the reports. The report that you're quite familiar with is the state appropriated employees full-time equivalent. As you can see, we're still well under our allotted amount, a total of 74 FTEs, so there's no issues or problems there. Each campus is within their approval. And then I just wanted to take just a few brief moments to give you just an update on what's been going on in HOD. Our biggest initiative right now is the compensation study that we've been working on. Just to remind you, a year ago we had our employees complete an employee satisfaction survey. And just to remind you, we had about 52% of our employees that indicated they were not happy with their rate of pay, that they felt like if they were to go somewhere else they could make more money. And so in response to that, the leadership group has contracted with a consulting group that is conducting an analysis right now. And it went out for an RFP, went through the process, a firm was selected, and we've been gathering data. I just got the first iteration of the data last weekend, so it's hot off the press. Initially, we wanted it to be completed at the end of January and be able to report to you this board meeting. We're a little behind schedule. Part of that reason is we allowed the employees to have additional time to complete what they call the JCQ, the job content questionnaire. And so we sent those out to all employees so they had an opportunity to complete a form basically said, this is what I do, this is my job, because who knows better than our employees. And so we knew, based on what they provided us, where to put them in and what job category. Just goes without saying, we were not allowed to change what the employees stated on their questionnaire. For example, I'll use the job of special projects. You know, that can mean different things in different campuses and have a wide range of what their responsibility involves. And so we use that information that the employee gave us to be able to put that, or the company, I should say, use that information to put them into certain pay grades and classifications. We had that delay of giving them a little extra time was very beneficial. We had 70% of our employees complete a JCQ. And so the company was very pleased with that amount. They said that's higher than average, so that is very helpful. We're looking, the company's also looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics for comparisons, and CUPA, which is the colleges and universities pay scale, and looking at some of the our competitors, if you will, who we would lose employees to that are in our local regions. And so, as I said, we just got that first data group back, and we'll be working with them as we go forward. It could be as long as 90 days. That's stretching it to me. I think that in 60 days we should be done with this. I'm going to really push for that because we want to to be able to be responsive to our employees. So I'm looking forward to providing a further update on the next board meeting about that. Any questions on this?
One, the comparison on jobs, is that going to be in the field of education or going to be comparing the business?
That's a very good question, and that's one of the, they had some difficulty with that in the faculty because normally when they work with firms, it's they go straight to other colleges and say, well, you know, you're a professor of X, Y, and Z, so they look at you. But yes, they have to look at business and industry, yes. And so definitely that's required extra work on the firm. But we want to get it right. Good question.
So when we get the results, are we prepared to act on them?
We spent an entire day on Tuesday
Yes.
talking about our philosophy as a leadership group and some of the things that we had decided together. And I'll use an example. One question would be, if a pay grade comes out and there's a minimum and a maximum, as a leadership group, you know, we decided that all employees should be paid at least at the minimum. So if somebody shows up that they're below minimum, we're automatically, you know, say they should be deserved to be paid at least at the minimum. And so we had to go through several different conversations to talk about those things as a group of how we want to make sure that what we do is fair and right and true for our employees.
I think another benefit of what Gail's leading us through is we will end up with a comprehensive compensation philosophy when we're done. One that she will eke out of all the colleges simultaneously. So we'll have a system-wide philosophy on how we do this. Plus, there's the order of resetting our pay grades and making sure that those are all correct with the market. Another thing we talked about was the frequency with which we would do this environmental test, which is essentially what this is, benchmarking against external constituents. And we haven't decided yet, but we're looking at either 4 years or 6 years for the external comparison. And so these are all disciplines that we've never had in HR before. And so Gail's leading us through all of this to get right.
In the past, we just had these huge pay grades and so many jobs all lumped into one particular pay grade. And we haven't done an analysis like this in...
I don't know. I'm not sure we ever had.
It really helps to have a min-max and a midpoint.
Yes.
And our goal is to be just below that midpoint. I mean, just if we go above the midpoint, they have to have tremendous credentials or years experience. So you know, that really helps you. It really helps me when I'm putting out a job offer.
Yeah. And those are muscles we haven't exercised before, but as a leadership team, we're starting to wrestle with those and develop the philosophy like you're talking about.
Do you have annual evaluations on all your employees?
We're supposed to, yes, sir. We're supposed to.
Is somebody follow up to see that they're done and everything?
Yes, the employees the supervisors receive an email that says so-and-so is due for an evaluation. And our colleges have done a very good job of getting everybody back on track.
Good.
It's very important to get feedback.
Are those done on the anniversary dates?
Yes. And one other reminder in regards to compensation, our employees we received a 3% across the board increase on their December 3rd paycheck, so that we got a little extra money for the Christmas holidays, and so that was good for our folks. Very quickly, Regent Hearne mentioned the new benefit Legal Shield. They have made, this is a prepaid legal service. It's an optional benefit for employees that they can payroll deduct. They have made visits across some of our campuses. They have not been out to West Texas yet, but they will do that. But it's, they'll provide sessions where our employees can learn about this service. And for example, if they decide to enroll if they want a will, they'll send them a kit to do a will, and they can talk with an attorney about contracts, and if they're buying a car or things like that. It's something that can be very valuable, and we heard from a previous benefit survey a couple of years ago that was something that employees they weren't interested in. And it also provides credit protection. You can check your credit rate on it and things like that. And we've had a pretty good response. I think Mary said in her report to Regent Hearne Regent, there were 88 people. Yes, 88 policies that were written for that. So we're trying to continue to enhance our benefit package for our folks, and we hope that they're interested in participating in that. And finally, just as I always do, our EAP, our Employee Assistance Program, the utilization update is the primary two divisions that, themes that our employees needed help with were counseling, and then also legal consulting. And that's a free benefit for our employees that they can do. So if they need counseling services for themselves or the family, they can go to the EAP and receive treatment for that.
Our health care, is it through ERS?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Gail. Good presentation.
Our next committee report will be the Committee for Facilities. And since Joe Gorecki is not here today, John Hatchel will chair that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The time is 12:45. At the meeting this morning, we had Regent Forrest, myself, Chairman Skinner joined us, and we are always fortunate to have our staff represented by Ray Fried and Chuck Smith. We have 7 minute orders to be presented today, and also a report on the status. Ray is going to also at the Ray and his team are working on looking at ways that we can expedite some of our construction and contracts, and if you just kind of get that lightly at the end, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have 7 minute orders to bring this morning, all on the consent agenda. The first minute order is 8-13, found on page F1 and F2. This minute order is from Texas State Technical College in Waco. This minute order is to rescind the previously approved minute order 87-07. The original minute order was for the concept of constructing infrastructure on the east side of the airport to develop leaseholder sites for tenants. Tenants were not secured as planned, and the project did not materialize. So we are recommending that the Board of Regents rescinds minute order 87-07, and there is a copy of that minute order attached for your review. Are there any questions? If not, moving on, the next minute order is 9-13, found on page F3. This minute order is from Texas State Technical College, Regent. This minute order is to accept the project, the renovation of Building 200M, the Consolidated Student Services Building at Texas State Technical College, Regent. We have some renderings, and Mr. Rick Herrera, because of where he is seated, has offered to show those to us. These are some pictures of the interior finishes. This building is located in the northeast quadrant of the campus, and it's most easily recognized from the outside by the end walls, which are at a radius top and creating a curved roof in a clear-story area. We recommend the Board of Regents authorizes the Chancellor or his designee to accept the renovation of Building 200M as a student services building at Texas State Technical College, Harlingen. And upon receipt of notification of final acceptance, the Board of Regents authorizes final payment due to the contract to be made in full. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 10-13, is found on page F4 and F5. This minute order is also from Hearne Regent. This minute order is for the appointment of the engineer for the re-roofing of Building 2 SSC. This is consistent with our policy requiring the Board of Regents to approve the appointment of an architect or engineer for projects of this size. This project just happens to be engineered by our in-house engineer. There's an example there of the drawings that are stamped. TSTC Hearne Regent is fortunate to have Mr. Chuck Smith, a professional engineer, as the Associate Vice President of Administrative Services. Chuck, if you don't mind standing up, for those that haven't met Chuck, you can meet him. Mr. Smith has more than 25 years' experience as an engineer and project manager in a wide variety of disciplines. During this time, he has designed roofs at various times. We recommend the Board of Regents approves the appointment of in-house engineer for the re-roofing of Building 2 SSC at Texas State Technical College, Harvard. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 11-13, is found on page F6 and F7. The minute order is also from Hearne Regent. This minute order is for the approval of the design that you just looked at for the re-roofing of Building 2 SSC. The project will convert the existing built-up roof, which is asphalt and gravel, to an insulated, adhered thermoplastic membrane system. We recommend the Board of Regents approves the plans and specifications for the re-roofing of Building 2 SSC at Texas State Technical College, Harvard. Are there any questions?
Is this hurricane?
Pardon me? Chuck might be able to speak to that. There was a lot of time, I know the question was asked earlier about designing to hurricane standards, and Chuck has done diligence on that. But Chuck, go ahead if you'd like to speak to that.
We exceeded the wind rating standards for this area. The roof is designed to withstand up to a 3-second burst of 140 miles an hour horizontal wind speed. So that's about a Category 4 hurricane, but there's no predicting what it is. We've sent it to the insurance company for review, and they have stamped it and approved it for insurance purposes.
Any other questions? The next minute order is 12-13. It's found on page F8. This minute order is from West Texas. This is for the approval of a 10-year lease renewal with the Sweetwater Industrial Foundation for Building 4 PPF and adjoining acreage. The lease payment on this lease would be $2,000 per year. The 4 PPF building houses the physical plant offices, maintenance equipment, provides indoor storage for the Sweetwater Fleet Solar Pool. Attachments are the letter from General Counsel on F9 and a map of the campus which shows this building to be located in the northeast corner, the upper right-hand corner of the campus. We recommend the Board of Regents approves the renewal of the lease agreement for a period of 10 years for Building 4 PPF and adjoining acreage, and authorizes the Chancellor or his designee to execute the renewals of the lease with Sweetwater Industrial Foundation. Are there any questions? The next minute order, 13-13, is found on page F11 and F12. This is also from West Texas and very similar to the previous minute order. But this minute order is for the approval and ratification of the lease agreement extension and amendment number 1 dated June 4, 2012. The period of the lease is for 10 years. The lease includes buildings 4 WHS, 4 STO, 4 SEC, and adjoining acreage. If you look back on page F10, those are the 3 buildings in the upper left-hand corner or northwest corner of the campus. The lease payment is $100 per year. 4WHS is being used to store and stage the wind turbine mobile trainers and a tractor for pulls in. The generator and other large trailer-mounted wind servicing equipment. Storing these units under the roof helps us to lower our insurance premium when they're not in use. 4STO is used to store large diesel engine parts used in the diesel program labs. 4SEC is used for office space for web application development. There's the attachments are a letter from the legal counsel and the extension. This original lease was approved in 2001 with the extensions as part of that lease. Following that approval, there was a systems operating standard that required board approval of extensions longer than 5 years. So to make sure that we were in compliance, we brought this to the board for ratification and approval. We recommend the Board of Regents approves and ratifies the lease agreement extension and amendment number 1, which renews for 120 months the lease agreement with the Sweetwater Industrial Foundation Incorporated for building 4WHS, building 4STO, building 4SEC, and adjoining education. Are there any questions? The next minute order is 14-13. The minute order brought this from Waco. It's found on page F17 and F18. This minute order is for the approval to name the library at East Williamson County Higher Education Center the Avery Family Library and Resource Center. The Avery family has been instrumental in the UCHEC project from its inception. The Averys continue to be great supporters of the center and its partners. In addition, the family has made significant contributions, and the TSTC Waco administration would like to recognize the family's generosity. This proposal complies with the system operating standard for the naming of buildings. So we recommend the Board of Regents approve the naming of the library located in the East Williamson County Higher Education Center as the Avery Family Library and Learning Resource Center. Are there any questions? We move to the project list found on page F20. This project list is for the Harlingen projects. The number 1 project on that list is the one, of course, we brought to you for acceptance. If the board does accept that building, we will remove it from the list next report. Building number 2, this is for the renovation of building 20 PM. If you recall, at the November board meeting, the Board of Regents approved the project contingent on full board approval. And the Harlingen administration did receive full board approval on December the 7th of 2012, so that project was moving forward. Project 3 and 4 had no new action. Project number 5, this project is the project that we are asking for approval of the engineer and approval of design, and if the board does that, this project will move forward. Turn the page to F21. This is the Waco project list. Number 1 project on the list is the housing. 120 units are complete. There's 15 remaining, and those will be complete in mid-June. Project number 2 is the UCHEC project. Pleased to say that that project is on schedule and in budget. We do have some pictures from that project. That's an aerial that shows the construction. They've got the wall board and weatherproofing, and you can just barely see it, but the scaffold on this, on the back of the building, shows where the masonry has been started. That project will be dried in by the end of this month. The next project is the Connolly building. And we do have some photos on that. From that construction also. The story wall went in just as scheduled, but unfortunately during that construction we got about 5 inches of rain. The contractor did everything he could to divert the water from the site, but we still got pretty good saturation. So before we place the horizontal concrete flatwork back, we've got to be sure that that subgrade is all dried out and compacted so we don't have cracking in the future. So that's caused about a 3-week delay on that project. That may have a larger impact because one of the plans for moving forward on that project was to make sure that the foundation repairs were stabilized and that we dewatered that envelope under the building before we started the finishes in the inside, in the architectural finishes. We're going to monitor that very closely, and we don't know for sure, but there is a possibility that could cause us to delay a year because remember that construction was going to happen during the summer when we could move the classes out of that project. So we'll have a better update for you at the next board meeting. Another pardon me?
I don't have any kids with that.
Elton's got a kiss on that. Another thing to point to in that report is in the column that shows the construction expenses as they're budgeted, we broke that apart, and remember we turned this into 2 phases, and phase 1 has its own construction budget, phase 2 has its construction budget, and both of those are, like I said, within budget. Project number 4, this is that TxDOT project for the rehabilitation of the runways in Waco, and that project is managed and being designed by TxDOT, and they are actually entering their final design phase at this time. And then project number 5 is going to be asked for to be rescinded. On the Huddle project, back on that, I just wanted to keep the board informed. There's no action required on this. But at one point in time, we were talking about whether we were going to install natural gas or propane to the site. We were having some issues trying to get that service run in there. Well, the project team negotiated the very best deal that they could with Atmos Energy, and we're going to have natural gas running to the site. The cost is going to be $346,000. Atmos is going to give us a rebate of $30,000 up front, and then there'll also be incentives of $3 per cubic foot for a year's gas usage. So the funding for that was budgeted in the operating budget. Are there any questions on the project? We did have a good discussion at our meeting this morning about the approval process that we go through, and earlier this month, we actually started a conversation about the number of steps we take to approve the project. It's 5. We approved the project concept, then we approved the architect, then we approved the design, then we approved the contractor, and then we accept the project. And in construction, those steps are so linear, and if the timing doesn't fall with the board meetings, they can have a big, significant impact on the project, on the length of the project. And of course, time is money. So we took a look at that and ran a couple scenarios of a schedule based on progress and a schedule based with board approval. Didn't do the best case or the worst case scenario, but on a 12-month project, it amounted to about 6 months. So we called Texas A&M and Texas Tech and asked them what their process looked like. They actually have a two-step process, which is approval of the concept and then approval of the final contract. So we aren't ready to bring a recommendation today, but at the next board meeting, we will likely rework the SOS, the Systems Operating Standard, and if the board is in agreement to cut some of those steps out, that's what the direction we'll be headed. The A&M and Tech both spend more time on this project report, so it will become more robust. Probably go to a PowerPoint presentation. So that's where the greatest update information will be on the project. And it will cut out some of the intermediate.
Let me just interject something here. I mean, I'll give you an example. When we were in Sweetwater a year ago, November, we brought to you a design, the first kind of concept of the design. Because I remember Penny wanted to know who was going to wash the windows. But there's an example of, we didn't like the design, so we waited till the next board meeting in Waco in May, and we brought you another design which everybody signed off on. Well, now we're talking about, what, 4 months, 5 months? Back then it wasn't so bad because things were pretty stable and the economy was down. Prices are going through the ceiling right now on materials. And if we continue to do this, we will continue to pay more money to do it. So we just got to revitalize this, redo this thing. And as Reeser knows, we have a different team now than we had before. You couldn't, before you wouldn't want to just turn them loose and approve the concept and the money and then approve the next step way down the road. We can do that now. So that's, hopefully next time you'll have a good recommendation for us.
And there are things that are important, like the architectural renderings. It might happen right in the middle between board meetings, and the way and technical proposals, there's correspondence with the board members with those renderings, so they do have a chance to look at it.
And they have, what, 10 days to reply?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are there any other questions about that? That concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Yes.
Wait.
Yes, I have a question that deals with facilities. Regent McKenna brought up a question about the windstorm, wind on that building, 140 miles an hour. Right. But, my question generally is, how do we insure our buildings? My concern, Chairman, is this county is in one of the 14 counties of the TWIA, Texas Windstorm Association. I happen to be on that board, and we're in a crisis mode right now over the TWIA rights and coverages, and there's even discussion of disbanding TWIA. So there's a lot of conflict. How are we insured?
Let's let the CFO answer that. He's in charge of getting insurance.
All of our property insurance is through storm, and we have very good coverage through that. The rates for South Texas are typically higher, and we've chosen to average out the entire state on those coverages, so we've got very good coverage.
Who's that?
State Office of Risk Management.
Oh, okay.
Might also say we had the risk management crew go through as a kind of a second look at our insurance coverage just in the past 60 days to look over our coverages and see if there was anything in there that looked like it was overinsured, underinsured, so forth, and they came back with the position that we have just the right kinds of policies at just the right kinds of levels.
Well, and we're averaging, as Gary was saying, but because this property is in one of the 14 risk counties on the coast, and so that's a different risk than Sweetwater or other campuses. So I just wanted to clarify that we were okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Report.
Thank you, sir. Our next committee report will be Committee for Fiscal Affairs, chaired by Gene Seaman.
And starting time is 2:05 p.m. February 7th, 2013. And the meeting this morning was President Elton and Gary Hendricks and myself had a thorough discussion of the minute orders. What really stuck out as a real issue. Gary, why don't you go ahead and proceed?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the first one is number 15-13C on PFA1, dealing with signature authorizations. The board sees this minute order about every meeting. We've had some additional changes in personnel. Mr. David Costello as who was previously the director of accounting and systems, now to Vice President for Financial Services at Waco. And so we have to move these authorities around to accommodate that change. And David is with us today. You might want to stand up.
So Alishka's last name now. Smith.
Also, Susan Stone basically is our new supervisor of accounting assistant, and she's added. And we have one person at West Texas leave, so that name is removed. So those are the only changes on the signature authorization. The next minute order is number 1613C, which is a revised schedule of emoluments for the spring 2013 semester. This too came to us essentially from Harlingen. We needed to increase the number of resident assistants in their dorms from 3 to 6. And that seems like a large increase, but that actually will put them closer to what the ordinary standard is of residents to resident assistant. And while we were at that, we also then removed the specific rates, since we're now using on page FA6 on lines 1, 2, and 3 the applicable rental rate for whatever facility the resident assistant is in. And that gives the colleges additional flexibility with respect to where they place these resident assistants. Those are the only changes to that. The next minute order is number 17-13C. The schedule of tuition and fee exemptions and waivers, non-mandatory, effective summer 2013. Basically, what we did with this schedule, which is on page FA8, is to update the citations in column A. They were a little out of date due to legislative changes. Also, in the previous version, there was a waiver for needy students, and that has been removed from the schedule due to legislative change. Those are the only changes to that schedule. Okay. Next minute order, number 18-13C, on page FA9, deals with the schedule of tuition and fees effective fall 2013 semester. And the first word on this particular schedule is there's no change in tuition rates that are being proposed. We made a couple of minor changes on lines 18 and 21, which you'll see on page FA12. On line 18, we have broadened out the definition of vaccines that can be charged to students to allow any required vaccines to fit that. That's optional by college. And on line 21, we've changed the name of that item to clarify that additional materials fee can apply to an online course or to a non-online course. And we made a technical correction in an earlier rate there. It's actually the cost of materials, including an administrative fee, and that rate will vary by course depending on what the materials are and what the cost is. So those are the only changes proposed, technical corrections here to the tuition fee schedule. The primary rates all remain the same as they have been since the fall of 2011. The next minute order, number 19-13C, is found on FA14. It's the policy for emergency student tuition, fee, and textbook loan program. And basically, the only change here is we've added and textbook. The law now allows us to do these loans for textbooks in addition to tuition and fees. So you'll find the recommended minute order on page FA14 now does include and textbook and program. So we can make that work.
I would say to the board that we have extensive inquiry about textbooks discussion. And I was informed that textbooks run between $80 to $300 per textbook.
Yes.
And you've got to rob the bank to pay their tax posts.
And they tweak one or two words in it every 2 or 3 years where they have to get new ones.
And so
Did you know about this?
pretty soon,
I have a daughter.
our textbooks will cost more than tuition.
I'll bet you in some schools they do.
Oh, wow. Anyway, that was just an inquiry. That's interesting. But
Okay, then the next minute order, number 20-13C is on page FA 15. And it basically just rescinds the prior policy on the emergency loans that did not include the textbooks.
a change in wording, right? Okay.
The next minute order on page FA 16 has to do with financing of furnishings, fixtures, and equipment for the East Williamson County Higher Education Center in Edison, Texas, brought to us by TSTC Waco. The construction contract does not include furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and that's on purpose. This allows us to take advantage of some state purchasing that is going to be less costly than if we had included in a construction contract. Also, we are able to finance these purchases up to $2.2 million is our request here through the Texas Public Finance Authority at very attractive rates. Their stated rate is 5% plus a 0.5% administrative fee, and our recent experience with them is that they're charging us about a 0.5%, so just similar to the administrative fee. 0.5% is what we're earning overall on our investments, so in a sense it's a trade-off there. So we need to take this particular request to the Texas Bond Review Board and then make application to the Texas Public Finance Authority to effect the loan. It'll be a 5-year loan, be paid back in 5 years, so that matches nicely with the expected life of the furnishings and equipment.
Are these furniture and fixtures only on the part that TSTC will be occupying, or are they for the full building?
My understanding is that this is for the full building, is that correct?
I can't see it. I know there's some of the labs that we're providing. I think the equipment for the
general areas,
it will be, if I'm not mistaken, Temple College is going to pay for some of it, but I'd have to get back with you on that.
According to our asset control rules, if we buy it, it will be labeled as our asset and it will continue to be our property. So even if we allow Temple College to use some of our furniture or assets, it'll still remain our property. So I can tell you that.
I think it'll be primarily for the general areas and for the TSTC labs.
But Temple College, that is correct, Gary, because Temple College, I know for a fact, in the latest report, will be furnishing all of their labs. They're doing our labs and the general area. Right. That's correct. This is a floating rate.
It's a floating rate. As long as the rates remain relatively low, it'll be very cost effective.
But it's paid off in 5 years.
5 years.
We're not going to get caught too much at the end.
Certainly, we wouldn't want to finance. We wouldn't want to finance this type of thing over the bonds.
What a world we live in when we can borrow money at a rate less than we get paid on our investments. I mean, it's just.
They do a great job, the Texas Public Finance Authority. The next minute order is number 22-13C on page FA 18. And this is a budget change for fiscal 13. And if you turn to page FA 19, you'll see the actual change. This is for TSTC Harlingen. This is simply to bring the budget up to speed with the guaranteed maximum price that was approved for renovating building 20 PM as the engineering center. Phase 1 done last time. The reason it's been brought to the board, normally the board would see a budget change for construction less than $500,000. However, this particular change caused the project cost to exceed the 10% threshold, so that's being brought.
I understand that. We discussed that this morning, Mike, and that anything that exceeds 10% has to be brought for approval because it's above the reserve. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Next, we have reports. First report you'll see on page FA21 is the comparison of budget expenditures and encumbrances for fiscal year 13 from September through December. And we would expect to see about a third of our budget expended at this point, with 2/3 left. And if you look at the chart, you'll see that's pretty much the case on E&G designated, auxiliary. The restricted and plant funds can either be over or under expended depending upon the level of activity in those areas. So that particular rule of thumb doesn't apply to these funds. So we're in right where we expect to be at this point in the year. The next report is the 5-year trend analysis on restricted revenue, fiscal years 29 through 2013. If you look at page FA24, you'll see the graph for that report. This particular report, we're going to be looking at a little bit more in the future to see if we can do something better with it than what it's showing you here. We're having the effect of, for instance, large amounts of financial aid in August affecting what you see in the first 4 months of the new fiscal year. And so we're going to look to see what we might do to straighten that out a little bit. So just to give you such a weird looking graph as this. What you see mostly, the financial aid component of this will be, for instance, leftovers of what didn't get distributed in August to students. And that has a big effect on the graph. So that's affected the last 2 years, and there's nothing unusual about it other than it just doesn't, it looks a little strange. So we will be working on this. The next report is on auxiliary enterprises for fiscal year 13. First graph on page FA27 is on food service operations, and all 3 of our food service operations show net revenues in a positive vein, and revenues and expenditures are fairly consistent with the past other 4 years. The next report on page FA29 deals with housing operations. The Waco and Harlingen housing operations are consistent with past operations. The West Texas and Marshall operations are showing a negative net revenue at this point. We anticipate that the West Texas operation will gain enrollment over time, and that will take care of some of that. The Marshall operation has been using students from Wiley College. They've been renting rooms for their students, and they've completed a new dormitory. So they're no longer renting rooms from us at Marshall. That's affected our net revenue, our gross revenue and our net revenue here. And in anticipation of that day, TSTC Marshall has set aside a large reserve to help make payments on this property. Additionally, we're going to be seeing if we can renegotiate some of these lease agreements we have with the TSTC Foundation for better rates, because there are some better rates out there. So all of that will start to hit us in the right direction. The next report on page FA31 is, and that's the graph, is on those store operations. And this is the rolling year through the fall semester, December 2012. And it's fairly consistent with past operations based upon enrollment trends. all four of those operations show a positive revenue. Next report is the report on changes in local fund balances for fiscal year 13. If you look at page FA 34, you'll see two areas there. The first is on designated funds. The second is on auxiliary funds. And we start with a September 1st balance of a little over $15 million in total for colleges on designated. And currently we're at $19 million at 12/31. And the 12/31 balance does include some revenues that apply to the spring semester. So we'll be expending some of those funds in the spring semester. That will reduce that balance. Auxiliary enterprises started with roughly $3 million and we're at a current balance of about $4 million. So those balances look good. The next report is the report on pledged collateral. Deposits in excess of $250,000. And on page FA 36, the last column on the right shows you that all of our pledged collateral was in excess of requirements. Good shape on that. Quarterly investment report is on page FA 38 through FA 41. And lists all of our investments in all the different financial institutions and rates that we're receiving on those investments. Rates continue to sag over time. So if you turn to page FA 41, on line 25, you'll see our weighted average rate of interest is currently, for this 3-month period, 0.50. And our benchmark is the 3-year treasury bond yield, and it's 0.34%. So we're still doing better than our benchmark. We've earned a grand total of nearly $58,000 on our investments. The total almost $39 million.
Cannot make that much, put it in bankers.
And the series of reports that we have in here are on the bond revenue proceeds. The first one is for the series 2009 bond proceeds. And if you look at page FA 43, you'll notice that Waco and Carlos still have about a total of about $4 million left to pull down on those projects that are listed on page FA 44. But we are getting the 2009 series pretty well extended. And this is as of November 30th, so some of these balances are now less than what you see on the additional drawdowns have been made. On the 2011 series of bond proceeds, look at page FA 46. This is primarily the funding that is paying for the Hatchel construction project, and of course it pays for the purchase of the land as well. We have expended almost $7 million of the nearly $21 million in that project. This is also as of November 30th. 15 acres was donated. Yeah, but we also purchased the additional for a total of 56 acres.
To the same family?
Yes. The last of the bond revenue proceeds is on Series 2011A. And if you look at page FA 49, you'll see numbers as of November 30th have been drawn down. So that's for the phase the renovation of building 20 PM engineering center at Burlington primarily. And some of that has been drawn down now. This is a report date number. And the last report in our list is a report on identity theft prevention program. This is an annual report that we bring to the board. We accomplished the annual training for about 200 of our frontline folks who deal directly with students and who have to be aware of personally identifying information that we require of students, and to be sure that they know what people might do to try to steal another person's identity, and to be aware of that and watch for it and to take appropriate action should they notice anything like that. We had one incident this last year where a student who applied, an applicant, not yet a student, applied for enrollment using another student's social security number. He brought that to that person's attention and asked for the social security cards, verify that, and that was the last we heard from that person. And we also then did advise the enrolled student of concern. That was what we noticed. And that completes the reports.
Do they have to have a social security card?
Well, they don't have to give it to us, but of course they're applying for financial aid, yes. And we collect most all of them. The coordinating board asks us to provide that information on all our reports.
So what if they're a national?
There are some students who have to have it done made up for them. That we try to collect all.
Not enrolled. A lot of people have to do pieces. They come across to school, TSTC, they come across with an extra miles of border. And they would have social security.
So they would have it done.
We have to put something in the field, and that's what he means by a dummy number.
Any questions for the principal tonight?
Thank you, Gene. At this time, the chair will reconvene the committee of the whole. And we would ask Adam Hutchison to give her invocation. Yes.
Go back and cover some minute orders.
Got two.
Where?
Right. Thank you.
Oh, I'm just some more.
That's okay.
We got some more minute orders. Okay, we have minute order 2313.
Chairman, we have 2 minute orders for IT. We have 2313 and 2413. I'll talk a little bit about both of them because you won't have a hand and then we'll go a little bit more detail. The first minute order will introduce a new framework for creating what we're calling information technology operating standards. And the second one will rescind existing minute orders that are a little outdated and will be replaced by the operating standards. We did include an extensive background for your information and where we're at, where we started, and where we're moving to. The minute order 2313 identifies a framework where we're using a steering committee made up of cross-functional folks. We do have an attachment of those members. What this group does is they review the necessity for a standard in a particular area. They vet their ideas and concerns and whatnot, and we develop a standard. That standard is then presented to the executive leadership team made up of the president and the chancellor. Upon approval, the chancellor will execute that document as executive order, and we will apply that across the system. The rescinding minute order that we're rescinding, we're replacing them with an operating standard for acceptable use, account management, password management, software licensing, and vendor access management. As justification, we're showing our operating standards are critical to ensure alignment, accountability, and compliance. In order to be effective tools of governance, the standards also need to be consistent in applicability, agile in implementation, measurable in performance, and most importantly, enforceable in practice when supporting the goals of TSTC. The recommended minute order is the policy of Texas State Technical College that information technology is effectively and efficiently governed in a manner that supports the goals and objectives of the college system, considers applicable regulations, guidelines, standards, and best practices, and results in the protection, availability, and security of technology assets and data. It's a very overarching statement, but the operating standards that will be developed to support that, we will be able to be more granular and in making sure that we're meeting those requirements. As I pointed out, we did have a couple of attachments. The first attachment identifies the operating standards I've already discussed. We expect those to be signed into executive order by February 13th next week. And we do have a few more in plan with the dates noted as well. The next attachment identifies the workflow that we are using. It identifies the different areas that the approval process will go by. We believe that to be an effective way of making sure that all concerns are properly vetted. And then lastly, we do have the list of the members of that steering committee. As you can see by the titles, it is very cross-functional, and we do have representation from every location. Any questions for that, Manila?
For context, I'd like to say, as you recall, a few years ago, we had 5 IT departments, one at each college and one at system. And what Rick has been leading us through for the past couple of years is a consolidation of that into one comprehensive IT group. We think in the long run, we'll spend money for the same level of service, or actually we'll spend less money for better service in the long run. The policies we had in place before were based on the notion that we had these 5 different departments that needed a centralized standard to operate under. And a lot of the legislative environment in which we work has evolved. You've heard us say a lot during audits about TAC 202, and that was a set of information technology laws that we have to start to get in compliance with. And as Rick redoes everything, we install those TAC 202 standards into the operations. And so what he's doing here is he's removing those old disjointed set of rules and replacing them with one that's unified. A lot of the discipline we looked for out of the old SOSs is now actually installed in the process of operating IT. In other words, since it's all controlled out of one place now, just our standard operating procedures put a lot of the controls and disciplines in place that before, frankly, we tried to do by remote control. So it has been a Herculean task doing what he's doing, and he's done a great job getting us there. We have a lot of room yet to grow, but I think it's something. Every time we save $1 in a function like this, it's another $1 in the classroom. And that's really the basis at which we're trying to work on all of these backroom functions is get the money out of there and put it where the students will get the benefit.
By the time we're said and done, you'll find that we rescinded 4-minute orders. We'll end up with 15 to 20 operating standards. And the idea is a minimum best practice that we will have as a system-wide. We're also taking it to the next level and developing internal procedures. We're also creating application governance rules to where we're making sure that we're safeguarding the data. And the idea behind the standard is that is a minimum requirement, and the governance documents will expand on it even further. So we are taking it to the very granular level as we deal with specific applications that we use to protect the data. The second minute order that I mentioned earlier is a rescinding of the 4 existing minute orders. Mine have those. We are requesting to rescind minute order 493, control of computer access, 103-94, control of network access, 102-02, information technology resource management, and 50-03, acceptable use of the resources. Any questions?
Thank you. At this time, why don't we take about a 10-minute break? That's my background.
He knows how to do it.
At this time, I would like to call Adam Hutchison to give her invocation.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you this afternoon and we acknowledge that you're the source of truth, that all good things come from you. With that in mind, we pray for our regents this afternoon that you'll give them wisdom as they make decisions and deliberate on behalf of TSTC in the state. We're thankful for their health and their continued service to the state, to the TSTC system. We pray for the college and the system leadership that they too will make good decisions with the resources allocated to them. And for the faculty and staff at the institutions, that you'll give them compassion, expertise, and diligence as they go about their work. And God, we pray for our students, that you give them courage and safety as they go through their studies, that they'll be successful, not just for their local community, but for the state, most of all for you. And so, Lord, we just pray for awareness and thankfulness as we go through the day. Pray that we'll be most aware of your grace and mercy on us. Protect our loved ones that couldn't be with us here this afternoon, and keep us safe until we can be together again. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Adam. The meeting of the Texas State Technological College Board of Regents is called to order this Thursday, February 7th, 2013 at 1:55 p.m. We need a determination of the quorum. Regents, please state your presence, beginning with Penny.
Penny Forrest, present.
Joe Hearne, present.
J.V. Martin, present.
John Hatchel, present.
Mike Marquette, present.
Chancellor, present.
Ellis Skinner, present. Alicia Smith has some guests she'd like to recognize.
Good afternoon, Regents, colleagues. It's my distinct honor to introduce you to 2 of our 16 members of the TSTC Leadership Institute, Dr. Edna Kloss, and of course, the lady you see a lot behind the scenes, Sharon Farias. They have been a part of our learning team that began in October of this year and will be completing in July of this year, and are really helping to improve the depth and breadth of leadership at all levels of our organization. Also, as we discussed earlier, we have 20 Excellence Award winners or honorees that were selected throughout the system by the colleges, nominated by their peers, selected by their colleges to go to the Chancellor for his recognition. They will also be recognized as NISOD honorees, which is the National Institute of Staff and Organizational Development, among all peers of this excellent caliber throughout the nation in May in Austin, Texas. And so it is my pleasure as well to introduce you to 3 of those honorees from Harlingen, one who's from System Operations serving in Harlingen, and those are Hector Yanes, Mary Crepeshaw, Mary Castanon, and Jennifer Sanchez.
Thank you, Alicia. Mr. Chancellor, would you like to have comments at this time?
I would indeed. This is my time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. My comments We'll cover three things today. The first is I want to give you a brief oral update on the legislative session that's going on right now. Then, thanks go to Chairman Skinner for the next phase. I'm going to ask Michael Bettersworth to come up and give you some higher ed context that we're operating under right now. Michael's comments will be some that we provided to Chairman Skinner a couple months ago. He liked it a lot and asked that we show it to you, the whole board. And then following Michael will be some brief comments from Provost Adam Hutchison, who just delivered our invocation. And he'll tell you about the really exciting skilled workforce initiative that Governor Perry came specifically here to Harlingen to hold a press conference and announce, in which TSTC is taking a statewide leadership role in developing a framework for competency-based learning. These comments won't take all that long, but they're really packed with a lot of useful information. First, regarding the legislature. You know we have a legislative team based in Austin, and I chair that effort, if you will. And this time of year, I'm actively involved in Austin. I was in Austin 4 days last week. I typically am there an awful lot during the session. But doing as much of the heavy lifting as anyone is our team, and we have two members of them here today, so I'd like you to meet them in case you haven't had a chance. So Marlene McMichael is in red. Marlene, go ahead and stand. And Marlene has been working in the Capitol for a long, long time. Yeah, long time. And we also have the newest member of our team, Nikki Gonzalez. Nikki joined us for this session. Nikki's been working in the Capitol for 12 years, most recently as Chief of Staff of a House representative there in the Capitol. I will tell you, you can't walk down the hall with these people and be in a hurry, because we're going to stop and hug everybody's neck, and we're going to say hello, and we're going to do all that, because they know everybody. And when we work in the Capitol, it's about being able to tell the TSTC story, and that begins with relationships and access. And that's what we have with our legislative team. So I wanted to let you meet them so that if you want to visit with them a little later, you have the opportunity to grab them. We have also members that help on the legislative efforts, and they don't go to the Capitol, but they help us in the background. And of course, that's Gary Hendricks, who helps. You'd be amazed at the number of times we get a question like, what's the XYZ numbers look like? And boom, Gary will have them to us. And also Michael helps us out constantly with strategy, with relationships, and interagency relations. He has some great relationships built with other agencies within there in Austin. So this session is an interesting one. From the outside, it looks like there's a big surplus. From the inside, you know there's a lot of commitments already made for a big part of that money. You also know that the surplus that starts the session isn't necessarily the budget number that'll end the session. There's a lot of things that are going to go on between now and that final gavel. But here's what we do know is the initial bill, and I told you about this earlier, has already come out, and it had TSTC and the rest of higher ed essentially with last year's numbers, but with cuts. That was actually an LBB directive, and that's where they're starting higher ed. Also on the table, out of the co-board, are accountability approaches for funding higher ed, one specifically for TSTC, one specifically for community colleges, and then a final one for the universities. Commissioner Paredes has already testified to those in front of Senate Finance, and they're on the table for consideration. What we hear in the background is that the starting numbers we have right now will get added together to these accountability numbers to begin to get closer to the final numbers for higher ed. There's a lot of clamor from other sectors. Medicaid is a big issue. Certainly public ed is a big deal, and now with the lawsuit having settled in the way that it has, there's a giant question mark there. You'll see both on the House and the Senate side people saying, how are we going to handle this? And it's an open-ended question because we don't know how quickly the appeal will work through the Supreme Court. The financial leaders seem to be saying, let's set aside a reserve for that. If they do, it'll be billions. So here's some more that'll eat into the alleged reserve that we have. both Senate and finance leaders on both Senate and the House sides have said we have got to have a healthy dose for water. We have reached an urgent matter in the state in water. It's not just important anymore, it's urgent. And transportation. Our infrastructure is really hitting a crucial period now where if we don't keep investing in it, we're going to have some troubles. We're just make the problem bigger. And so we see billions more set aside. The numbers differ as to which side of the house you're looking at. Some are looking at 2 to 3 billion for water. Others are looking for more. Others are looking at 3 to 4 billion for transportation. The point is, I think there's a real good chance that TSTC could end up at the other end of this session with funding that won't be less than what we have now, but has a reasonable chance to be more. I think that's where we'll be. That's dangerous to make those predictions. You just, because it ain't over till it's over. But we think there are reasonable indicators that we may end up there. Our new funding formula today, I've already mentioned to you, today a member asked for the LBB to be directed to withdraw the initial contact hour-based placeholder that is in the budget and replace it with our results-based formula. We knew that was going to come. We just didn't know that it would happen so early in the session. But now that's on the table and the LBB is working on that. If the co-board recommendation is followed, we'll end up with a 3% increase. We don't know yet whether that's the number that'll hold. We'll see. But what we do know is the new results-based formula indicates a higher number than we have right now. That's the good news. It's not a big amount higher, but then again, we wouldn't want it to be because then folks might suspect that the new funding formula is actually a cash grab and not a driver of doing business under a new model. And so we have had all the appointments that we want to have, generally speaking, with all of the key leaders that we want to meet with. We've either had them in the immediate past or they're on the schedule for the immediate future. We've already testified in front of Senate Finance. We're scheduled to be in front of the Higher Ed Subcommittee of House Appropriations at 7 o'clock Thursday morning. So and all your presidents will be there to support in that testimony. Typically, we ask the presidents to be there for House Appropriations and for Senate Finance. We have yet to testify during session. We did back in the fall in front of Senate Higher Ed and in front of Dan Branch's House Higher Ed. What I can tell you is in terms of the committee makeups, we've never been in a better situation than we are right now. We literally have members of the TSTC contingency, if you will. In other words, those elected officials with TSTCs in their district on every single committee except House Appropriations, or House Appropriations Higher Ed. We do have 3 members of our contingency on the broader House Appropriations Committee. What that gives us is an inside voice for TSTC. And so we're very optimistic that we should have a good session this time. We'll continue to work it as diligently as we always have, and we'll keep you posted as progress is made. So that's the legislative part. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Marlene.
Do you want to mention corporate voices?
I do. I want you to know, and Ellis, thank you. Ellis happened to be in Austin last week. We had a Corporate Voices event. Corporate Voices is a group of volunteers out of industry who hire our graduates. It includes people like 3M and other employers from across Texas, and these are executive leaders in these companies, and they came to Austin and we held a dinner. Elected officials came to the dinner, and this was a venue in which the people who hire our graduates got a chance to talk directly to the elected officials who make the decisions on funding TSTC. And so they got the opportunity to hear directly from those industries, here's the value TSTC provides to us. We had 6 House members and 1 senator who were there at the dinner. or at the event, and each one of them got an earful out of the industry in terms of that. And so they're probably at the end of the session, we may try to have a thank you event for those Corporate Voices folks, and we'll encourage y'all to come if you want to, and get together with them and say thank you for what they've done. And those people come from every region in the state. We have some from West Texas, we have Central, we have Dallas-Fort Worth, East Texas, and South Texas. And so we had a good contingency of folks there. The presidents were there for that event too. Ellis happened to be in town for an Austin event, and we appreciate you coming by too. Your presence was really valued. Thank you.
So the LBB that was being, somebody asked that, a member of the House asked the LBB to apply the new funding methodology just to TSTC.
We have our own unique funding methodology on the table.
Right.
And it was recommended to the LBB by the coordinating board. However, LBB staff was directed for the first round, use last year's method for everybody. Because it is also expected that the community colleges will have accountability used for their funding this year too, in the form of an amended momentum points scheme as a model. And they actually formally asked for their new accountability funding for this session. But in order to get the bill out on time, they just warmed over last year, if you will. It's probably the wrong word. Re-upped last time with the intention of adding these in. So our method is already sitting there on the table ready to go. And if LBB just adopts the co-board, that'll be a 3% increase.
We asked for that.
Oh, sure. Oh, you bet. Yes. And not only did we ask for it, there was a rider passed last session that directed that would be used this time. So the legislature is really kind of obligated to consider it, even though one session can't obligate another. They're obligated to at least consider it because the co-board was ordered to use the new method in forwarding our recommendation. Okay, with that in mind, then I want to keep moving. Michael, as you know, Michael, come on in. Michael is in charge of our technology forecasting group. He has his own website. You can go see all the work that's being done there. Michael's effort is funded by a line item by the state of Texas. Our forecasting that he does for technology is used by corporations and educators and industry in terms of what's coming down the pike, what's hot, and what's not. And with that in mind, he's constantly got his gaze on the horizon, and if you will, and his finger on the pulse. And so one of the things that he keeps an eye on for us is the landscape of higher ed. And so he's going to share some of that with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm also starting a timer here so we get us out of here on time. Thank you, Chairman Skinner. I gave a version of this presentation for the Chairman's orientation in Waco, and he asked that I share this with you today. I've also updated this with some new data, Chairman, that's since our last presentation. I want to start with covering some general context about some of the landscape of higher education. We covered this actually a year ago, last time we were here, about some of the student loan debt and some of those elements. So we're going to update some of those new figures. There's some new developments. And then that gives us a context for where TST is today in that mix, and really why we have an opportunity, why we're well positioned in this context. The first is the new numbers on class of 2012 nationally. These figures show that a large number of students graduating across the country are graduating with the most debt they've ever had, over 28,000. And their starting pay is also at a 10-year low. So the downward turn in the economy means that the employment opportunities are less. So they have more debt and they have less income. This is resulting in a high degree of defaults and increases in student loans. The student loan debt, it hit $1 trillion back last year, and it's continuing to go up. It's more than credit card debt. And the bulk of this debt was accrued over the last 10 years. That's an interesting part of this. The up-ramp and the uptick. As the economy goes down, more people go to college typically. So it varies by degree program, by sector. So we had this massive amount. We also had the increase in Pell Grants. So a lot more people went to college, and a lot of more student loan debt was accrued as a result of that. Almost all of it being Sally Mae with the federal government. These are some of the disturbing figures about defaults and delinquencies. As all of the other sectors of debt, revolving credit, things like home mortgages or auto loans, the number of the defaults in those areas has actually gone down most recently as people pay off debt. Usually in a downward economy, people save more and start paying off their credit cards and debt out of concern, out of concern. Student loan debt, however, and defaults has gone up. It's leaving the pack. The most recent data is of Q3 for 2012, and we see this fairly significant jump in 90-day delinquencies. This is national data. The actual figures, however, and this is from the Fed, the New York Fed numbers that came out. This is another study that was done by the New York Fed. When they look at actual payments, the students that need to be, former students rather, that need to be in repayment, the actual default rate they estimate is somewhere between 21 and 27% of student loans are in some level of, they're not in repayment. And that's a problem. It's a problem nationally. So there is this concern that higher education is overpriced and under-delivering. We saw an article recently regarding UT and the governor that came out on the 3rd. Should higher ed be research institutions, or should it be more utilitarian? Should it be a Chevrolet? Should it be this? So there's a lot of debates also about access and affordability that all of these issues are driving up. And we are in the context of those conversations. However, we're in a very good place. Georgetown University has come out and said we need to focus more on employability. We saw this report at our update last year. Harvard University, after that, came out and said that college and career, it's not mutually exclusive. We have been really focused on the four-year path as the only path, but they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, CTE provides with better job opportunities. And CTE, from Harvard's perspective, and this is Will Simons at Harvard, CTE is his suggestion and employability from Georgetown of how we improve higher education outputs to a large degree. An important context to that is that education is different. There are different kinds of education, and so there are different measures for the success of education. It's a diverse industry and field. Governor Conley, when he created the George Conley Technical Institute originally, he's also responsible for UT or some of UT and some of our research institutes. That governor at the time understood the diversity of education. Georgetown came out most recently in September with a new report specifically focusing on career and technical education. So a fact that an Ivy League institution or upwards towards that is touting the benefits of CTE is good. So higher education needs to be more like CTE. Well, guess what? TSTC already is CTE to a large degree. So people need to move more in this direction. That means we're in a good place. He also made some point, though, about how higher ed will evolve is with information systems, and it's about transparency. And we'll have another recommendation that he said here in a second that's really insightful. But basically he's saying we need to know more about earnings outcomes, we need to know about placement, we need to have more information so people can make better decisions. And in his opinion, that's what's going to drive some of these changes in education, is that kind of transparency. The federal government weighed in and with gainful employment and attempted, it's moderately successful, some of this was struck down, we'll see in a second, to do that. They wanted more transparency in education. What were your earnings? What were your placement rates by degree program? There was a significant amount of lobby that this unleashed from both the proprietary sector and the public sector. Untold amounts of money that was unprecedented in those sectors were spent because of this in the registrar and this suggestion of doing this. And there was a lawsuit. And in June 5th last year, the gainful employment was struck down. Well, a part of it was, at least. However, and the reason that the judge struck it down was that one of the measures the Department of Education chose, he said, was arbitrary. They needed to have a stronger backing for why they had this one cutoff. But something in the report that came out in the case, he said gainful employment regulations are a reasonable interpretation of an ambiguous statutory command. That being that Title IV funding should lead towards gainful employment. So the judge basically said, the core logic of what the Department of Education is trying to do is sound. There was one element of the mechanics that was off. So we will see whether the Department of Education attempts to redo gainful employment, because the judge in effect said, if you change this one thing, we'll reconsider that. As the student loan issue continues to be a problem, that means that there's a likelihood or a probability, it wouldn't be a surprise, if gainful employment came back in version 2.0. We're already, however, seeing students start to vote with their feet. In this case, law school applications and enrollment across the country. Law school applications are plummeting at a 30-year low, and the enrollments are starting to go down as well. We've seen some studies or some stories of students who have a law degree who are suing their law school because they can't find a job. They're putting their skills to work. So we're already seeing, and students, people figure that out. We see enrollment grow in a program when there's a lot of job demand because people find out about that. So the market will speak by programs based on that kind of transparency, regardless of regulation. So that was some context. Now a little bit about some things that are going on around the colleges of the system in this mix. One is market analysis, and the other one is curriculum alignment, which Adam's going to speak to in addition in just a moment. For so long in higher education, we have focused on activity measures. And these are largely because the federal government requires us to report them. IPEDS, the Department of Education, as well as our coordinating board and other state agencies, federal and state, set reporting requirements. And so we do all of these reports to comply with them. Most of those reports, however, are measures of activity. Even our number of awards going up is a great measure. Still in its end an activity measure, which is where, in our future, we're going to be looking even more at earnings and placement numbers more directly. These are performance measures. And how satisfied is a student with the job that they received after graduation? The employer. What are the starting earnings for that region, for that industry, compared to other programs? What's the return on investment to the taxpayer? How efficient were we in the delivery? All of these are performance measures that TSTC is increasingly adopting internally for our own quality improvement. And more people are getting on the bandwagon for this. When TSTC was asked to consider outcomes-based funding, and we said yes all those years ago, it raised a few eyebrows as well. We'll see if that works. But now we have other governors around the country who are echoing and following Texas's lead, this being the most recent statement. And a quote people are finding popular here: he wants a new model based on butts in seats, but not on how many of those butts, not based on butts on seats, but based on how many can get a job. And this is Governor Pat McCrory just a few days ago. And one of the elements of Anthony Carnevale's report says that we need to link transcripts or graduate files with wage records so we can compare earnings outcomes. Well, it turns out Texas is already doing that. And our funding model is based on that exact mechanic. The Coordinating Board and Workforce Commission already do what Carnevale suggested. They started doing it over 10 years ago. One of the first states, I think perhaps the first state to do that. Well, we're utilizing those tools now to determine which of TSTC's programs, how are we doing? This is Coordinating Board data that was used in the funding formula discussions, and it shows that the average earnings of our associate degrees in instrumentation are up into the 60s. That dental hygienists are up above the 50s. And so this is data that we have now available, and we're getting increasingly better at it. Instead of a yearly basis, we hope to have it on a quarterly basis, so we can do internal program management. This was a good one for West Texas. We didn't have this data, and when we looked at it, we saw that the highest paying nursing graduates in the entire state of Texas for 2-year degree programs, TSTC West Texas, one of the newest nursing programs. And seeing that data and knowing where we rank in the entire state, the highest paying nursing program, it's good benchmarking, it's a great morale boost. But also, if we have some programs that are ranked lower, that gives us highlights where we need to put more resources. So both the good and the bad come with this type of transparency. We tend to love the numbers when they're good. We tend to say the numbers are wrong when they're bad. So we're working through some of those things too. This is an interesting comparison of UT Austin's bachelor's degrees versus, I would say versus, but juxtaposed with TSTC associates and certificates. I want to point out one here, this line worker certificate at TSTC Waco, which is fairly new. Ron, what's the cost of that certificate program? The line worker. The cost of the lineman, yeah.
Oh, dude, it's 3 terms, so you're looking at $5,000 to $6,000.
So a $5,000 or $6,000 cost of a certificate results in the first year pay of $51,000 according to the Workforce Commission Coordinating Board. First year pay. Compare that with the cost of a four-year degree and some of the first-year pay in the 30s, 40s, or even, I won't pick on any particular programs, but applied biology and below 30, first year starting. There's a vast difference. The point of this is, it's not the level of education that determines one's earnings, it's the field of study. It's how good the program is in relation to its market demand. That's the determining factor of earnings, the primary one. Geographic location absolutely has an impact. But where we choose to partner and which employers we choose to partner with also has a huge impact on that. So these are all things that, because we're moving towards outcomes-based funding, we now are getting much more interested in our outcomes data. And structure is driving that behavior. In the end, what we want to do is we use a mix of traditional labor market information and real-time data to make more informed strategic decisions. We want to align our curriculum with market demand. And these data tools enable us to do that. This is one data tool I'll show you quickly that our career services directors across all the system are using today, and it's called One Analytics. And this tool enables us to search every job posting in the state of Texas or in the entire country with a different account. We can do both in real time. So if IBM or Bechtel Fleur or another company posts a job posting, we can see that. We can use that to target new employers for us to do partnerships with. Career Services uses it to help match students with job opportunities. We can also use it for curriculum alignment, because we can take every single welding job in the state of Texas, scrape all of that data, analyze it, and compare it with our curriculum to see how aligned are we with the skills that are in demand today. So this is big data being used at TSTC for curriculum alignment, job placement, a lot of different tools, and beyond. We're really just getting started throughout the college. Lastly is on curriculum alignment. Traditionally, when colleges design an occupationally oriented program, they do what's called a DACM. And this is developed by the University of Ohio over decades, and we've been doing them for decades. You may have taken part in this, and previously, if you were members of an industry advisory committee, you'll come to it. Yes?
Isn't it Ohio State?
Ohio State?
Yeah.
Oh, Ohio State University, thank you. So a group of industry members will come around the table and discuss things. Well, this works really well for, say, a nursing program, because a nursing degree and a nursing occupation, they're licensed and they're very well aligned. But it doesn't work well for, say, a computer programmer, because computer programmers can have all different kinds of skills. A Java developer, a QA, there's different skills. So the job title and the skills don't align. Similarly, the programs can be very different. A welding program at one college versus another college can be drastically different in their practical application. So this level of analysis doesn't work. We have to get down to what the skills are. We have to get down into the competencies. But there's a problem with skills, and that is there's no real way of defining them, at least there hasn't been, in a way that we can compare them. There's different structures. So we adopted an ONET derivative called detailed work activities, and we're using this to describe the world of work. And when we do that and describe our curriculum, now we can do comparisons. We can look at the deltas. That's the nuts and bolts of it. The coordinating board funded a grant for us to do this in the state of Texas. It's now in its second year. It's Ron Sanders, Larry Grulick, Terry Conroy, Ron Persley. It's now at Marshall as well with Wayne and in Tyler or Temple College. Temple. So we're expanding this model with additional colleges throughout the system. So instead of relying on a few people around a room, because sometimes we get what's called the vice president of meetings, now we use these online tools and we can have tens, hundreds of people evaluating our curriculum and the job to see how well we do. So much more fidelity. Use of online tools to evaluate our alignment with workforce demand. All this stuff is pretty bleeding edge and still in development, but we've deployed it now across 15 programs. Now it's going against 10 additional, and we have for June or July another 25 slated.
Right, and that's what we're working on right now, is trying to get this as automated as possible.
Yes.
So that we don't have to do a lot of manual labor to get this accomplished.
I want to point out the fact again that structure drives behavior. Because of the funding model, because of the focus on earnings and outcomes, we have a lot more interest in getting into this type of alignment. It makes more sense for us to put resources there rather than just putting them, or not just, but majority on the recruiting and front end. Now we're really focusing on that other end, the placement. So this is an actual example of when we analyzed one program for its degree of alignment, and after we went through the process, this was the post-alignment. And dramatic differences, very efficient, very quick. The output of the first year was, we did sunset one award, Waco did. We did some program redesign, we consolidated some awards, and some curriculum revisions, all through that process. The departments and faculty that were involved in that participated in a workshop to teach other colleges about it and how to do it as well. I'm going to skip through that in the interest of time. This was most recently at CES. This is James Applegate. He's the Vice President of Program Development for the Lumina Foundation. And at a conference, he said this is the guy in charge of the money for Lumina to a large degree. And he's got an interesting past and an interesting background. But he's also in charge of helping direct Lumina's direction in improving higher education to a large degree. We have some partnerships with Lumina today in those veins. But he said a few things that really stood out. One, we have to move to a system that is learning outcome based, and the degrees are clearly defined, so we know when we are done. We have to be competency based. Okay, that's exactly what we're talking about and what we're doing. Right now, we're trapped in a credit hour seat time system. Sound familiar? Okay, we're getting out of that system. And lastly, if you're focused on seat time for a student, you're focused on the wrong end of the student. And that's all of these directions that Lumina is saying the country needs to go is where TSTC really is going and has gone. We're out in front of a lot of these different changes that are happening. We're not focused on just getting students into college. We're, to use a statement from Chancellor Reeser, we're focused on getting them out and into a job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. You know, you saw in his, next to the final slide, the whole call for a new innovative approach to this that involves an abandonment of seat time and a focus on competency. Our governor knows that. Our commissioner of higher ed has embraced the concept. He knows it's right for technical training, and for that reason, this summer, the commissioner of higher ed, Caesar represented the colleges and I, along with some other TSTCers, went to the co-board and began to discuss how we can prototype a new framework for education, particularly for technical ed. And we came up with a plan. We are getting funding in the next few days, I believe. Adam will tell you more about that. But TSTC will be developing a new competency-based framework for technical training for the state of Texas in partnership with the co-board and the Workforce Commission. And so Adam, if you'll come up, Adam is the project manager for us on this. His normal job is he's the provost here in Harlingen, and therefore is the chief academic officer and does instruction here. But he's also the system-wide project manager for this new project, and he'll take a few minutes and just describe it to you. This is a big deal. So take it away. Don't mess it up. No, don't mess it up. Yeah.
That's what he said when we got started. Well, I'll take just a few minutes to give you a quick sketch of how the project's going and some of those details. At the meeting in November or October in Sweetwater, the Chancellor introduced the idea. A little bit of background for you first. This is really a culmination of several ongoing conversations that started between the coordinating board and TSTC, expanded to the Workforce Commission and TSTC, and then other state agencies began to get involved, and they pulled industry groups into the mix. The Texas Association of Manufacturers and others were at the table in those conversations. Most recently, though, the coordinating board, the Workforce Commission, the Texas Association of Manufacturers, and the governor's office really all coalesced around this particular project as it's now defined. It's gotten enough traction in Austin and across the state that there are some bills that have been filed that have what we call trailing legislation attached to them. It's really a framework so that as projects like this come on board, there's an opportunity for the legislature to fund them as they're delivered along the way. So we know that it has the attention of legislatures as well as other state agencies in the Austin area. So really what's going on? What are the essential elements here? This provides a framework for college. So we use that at the beginning to enhance that this really is in our mission. This is exactly what we do. But as Michael mentioned, it's really based on competency and skill mastery versus the traditional model of clock hours. When we went to college, if we made decent grades and we survived the semester, we advanced on to the next semester. And that's generally how higher education has progressed all through Texas. This project, however, and this type of event will focus more on a program of study instead of individual discrete courses. So when a student enters into this activity, they're not taking a battery of courses or some menu that's been rearranged as we go along and hoping to survive semester to semester. Instead, they're enrolling in a program of study that will carry them from the beginning until the end. In order to do that, it will be made up of those learning outcomes. Michael talked about the DWA process where we really define better what are the things that a student needs to learn to do as they go through. That program of study, a start and an end date, will be composed of those learning outcomes along the way. And we'll assess them and allow a student to advance as they demonstrate mastery of those things. Rather than simply surviving the semester, they're showing that they can really do the work, and that's what drives the progression. One of the things that make this very important to the state and for TSTC in general is it's upwardly mobile. That is, it provides a pathway for students to keep going to college even when they're done with this program of study. So let me just stop here if I may. We've done this before. In fact, it's really a part of TSTC's DNA. It's been a part of what we've been doing for almost 50 years through our corporate and community education services, where we work directly with businesses and help employees get better skills. What's significantly different is how we're doing it for students pursuing a degree or certificate level program. For this particular project, we've engaged the Texas Association of Manufacturers, they're shown here as TAM, in the curriculum development piece. We've indicated early on we need industry at the table to ensure that the right things are a part of the curriculum. As they help us define the curricular elements, we'll engage the TSTC faculty to ensure that those curricular elements are in the right sequence so that students are getting the information properly, that we're removing unnecessary duplicates, and that all the parts and pieces that make a good, quality, appropriate higher education program are in place. Curriculum alignment really is key in the prototype. What we expect to deliver is a Certificate 1 level in industrial systems. That's probably less than 42 traditional credit hour program length of study. Here's what's important again as it relates to the way this program operates. For the first time, we'll be able to offer this type of competency model that allows students to access things like financial aid. And it transcripts their program in the same way that a traditional semester clock hour program is transcripted. So if a student begins with TSTC, finishes this program, and then transfers to a job in San Jacinto, and they want to finish their AAS at San Jacinto Junior College, those credits they took here are transferable there and on to Bachelor's of Applied Sciences and BAT degrees and so forth around the state. That transferable credit's an important piece. It'll start with prototype projects at TSTC Hearne Regent and at the UCHEC campus that's overseen by TSTC Waco. And we expect it to be a level 1 in what we call industrial systems, really that advanced manufacturing envelope of hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical control systems. Courses will begin in fall of 13. So it's on a very aggressive timetable. Well, it feels very aggressive to us in higher ed. About the project specifically, because of the aggressive timeline and a lot of the machinery that needs to be in place to effectively help students, we approached the coordinating board for a Carl Perkins leadership grant. I said at the beginning that the coordinating board was involved in early conversations. They've since awarded that grant. Last week we got notification. It's almost $400,000 that will support the curriculum development and personnel and some other activities that we really need to do, including things like aligning our financial aid process, aligning our admissions and registration processes, which are not really built for this methodology. This project runs through August of this year. So when this grant is done, it's time to start teaching. Now, I know you can't see the detail in the picture, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot that this is what the high-level planning looks like, and I'll really quickly describe what's going on right now between today and August of this year. There are some real discrete stakeholder groups, and we've already been meeting and working on the plan. The green piece, for example, is the financial piece. How do we get this accounting process working? The blue represents the curriculum development, ensuring that the alignment is there, and our TSTC faculty are involved in designing the outcomes. The orange really indicates all of the business processes. Again, this is a different way of doing higher ed than the Department of Ed for financial aid purposes, or the transcription process, or our general admissions process has worked in the past. We'll begin managing the student intake for students who will start in the fall. That intake of students will actually happen in the summer, so that if we identify a student who's a very good candidate, maybe a veteran who has experience and those competencies can accelerate them through the program, or someone who has a lot of industry experience and wants to take advantage of now getting a degree and a certificate on it, we need to help that student be ready to start the program in the fall. And so it includes some academic preparatory activities, ensuring that their reading, writing, and mathematics levels are at the appropriate points. And then finally, and this is a really important part for us, and the purple at the end is really where we go back to the coordinating board, and it's our opportunity to say this is how it's done. The challenge that's been laid before us by the coordinating board is nobody really does it this way, and so there's not a blueprint or a manual. We have the opportunity to write that manual. So some of the benefits certainly is it creates that new framework for technical training in Texas, but as I mentioned before, it lets us go back to the coordinating board and say this is how it gets done. Other community colleges might be interested in trying to implement a competency-based model, and this provides a framework for all of Texas, with TSTC as the lead institution of how to accomplish it. Certainly it aligns with our funding formula, and it also creates a more direct pathway for students that are looking for that direct-to-work mechanism. We do believe that there will be many students who complete this and circle back through higher education, whether to advance in degrees or in their position in their jobs, but this is a great starting point for people to get into the workforce in an effective and efficient manner. Ultimately, it's obviously got a lot of value and attention to it. We were pleased to have the governor on our campus to talk about it. I'm sure the chancellor and his team in Austin are hearing conversations about what is this skilled workforce initiative. It's a big project. Most of the work, honestly, will happen between now and August 31st and laying all the foundational groundwork. As I said earlier, teaching courses like this isn't new to us. It's absolutely in our DNA. But I'm proud to be a part of the project. We've got a great team working on it and appreciate the chancellor's support. Are there any questions I can answer for you along the way? All right, thank you.
Great job. You know, I'd like to also offer that one other crucial design criteria of this whole program is that it's transportable and replicable. And so once this framework is invented and it's your staff, your team that's inventing it, it's going to be made available in a framework for other colleges to help their particular regions in terms of a fast-track competency-based training model. And there's one more thing I have to add. I've never seen a situation in which the co-board, the Workforce Commission, and a state agency of education like TSTC have come together in such a strong, collaborative, singly focused way as this one. This is a real groundbreaker, and so your TSTC is on the bleeding edge of quite literally inventing a whole new form of college for Texas. So it is really, really a big deal. And I'm really proud of the team that's pulling all of this off, and I'm most pleased that our agency is at the table with those other statewide agencies in terms of making a big difference for how things are going. So that is really, really special. So accolades to TWC and to the commission, well, to Chairman Alcantar, to Commissioner Paredes. Those guys really had some vision here in seeing that there's better ways we could do things. And there's one more thing that's really cool about this. Since we're co-inventing this with them, it also means that the reporting structures and the rules that we operate under and all of that are simultaneously being tweaked over on the co-board side. So we don't have to invent a new something and then have antibodies in the system that kind of come back and unwind the innovation. It's done all at the same time, and that's going to allow us to really make a difference. So it's really, really cool. Finally, I wanted to say thank you for indulging me in terms of allowing me to showcase some of the young talent we have on your team. I didn't ask these guys to come up and speak only because they happen to be content experts, but because they're examples of the kind of future you have in leadership here at TSTC. These are guys that, as time goes by, are going to make giant difference for us and for you as the folks who govern us. And we have more like them back there in the shed. So I wanted you to know that too. Yes.
So what about in Harlingen especially, I know it might be the other campuses as well, how are we going to account for the core students that are, you know, they get their basics here and transfer to the four-year schools like I did. I took 30-some hours here on this campus and then I transferred to UTV. Those aren't outcomes or job placements, or how are those being accounted for and funded?
The under the funding formula, transfers will count eventually. Here's what we know is based on the version 1 of the funding formula, Caesar will get funded for the academic students that he has right now. And in time, we intend to make it even more sophisticated in terms of the higher ranges that those people reach, the more we get paid. And the co-board agrees too that those are the sorts of things that'll be involved in version 2 and version 3 of our funding formula.
So you'll track them?
Sure, yeah, oh yes. Well, we won't have to, the co-board will do it for us. Right now we lose somewhere between 3 to 5% of our students out of state, give or take. That's not a material enough number that we have to actually individually track for it, because there's enough conservatism built in the formula that we actually get paid, even though we do lose some. They leak, if you will, in terms of out of state. So we're getting sufficient funding even though some of our people leave. That's another way to say what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
One more thing is you have a handbook in front of you. We have prepared a brand new Regents handbook. It's updated with new legislative things. It reflects your new bylaws. It has some of the new latest thinking out of the American Association of Two-Year Colleges, Community Colleges, and all of that. And so it's there for your review. What we intend to do is next board meeting, we'll do a very brief kind of run through in terms of what's there, but we wanted to give it to you ahead of time so that you had a chance to review it if you'd like to.
We have a test, but...
You know, we are a college. That's a great idea. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, it'll be an open book test.
Thank you,
Pass
Chancellor.
it back, Mr. Chair.
I thank Caesar Maldonado. Gives us a report on Harlingen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
You know, you heard some great presentations on a lot of the technical dealings with what we're working with in advancing the state of Texas. It's student success, it's graduate placement, and it's workforce advancement. You hear about the programs that might be looked at as acceleration. The competency-based program is referred to by some as accelerating throughput. What we're doing is just using the synergy of experience of those that are already in the workplace. It could be worker recasting. It could be someone that's coming out of high school that's worked several years in a trade. So we're trying to capture that. And the students that leave, a question I'm always asked is, well, are we sacrificing quality? And none of this sacrifices quality. The quality of the assessment of the students and their capabilities when they leave here stays the same. We're not dropping standards. You've seen the slides, you've seen the charts, but what it's about is lives. And you had in your packets our annual report that shares with you stories of our students and the challenges they've had and the great work that our faculty does and that our staff does in reaching out to students and keeping them in school. And my report to you today, as it has been in the past years, is a brief video. That way I can keep it down to a certain time limit and not go on for 30 minutes. So if the video is queued up, I'd like to play it, and then I'll answer any questions you might have at the end. Thank you. The exciting thing about 2012 was that we were looking at that year as the culmination of the alignment process that we started back in early 2009.
I decided to go into the RN program because I enjoy helping people. I knew it was for me, and I was like so excited.
Last year when we did our application period, we had twice as many applicants as we had spots. It's a very competitive program.
Sometimes diagnose them with something else. You have to be ready, willing, and able to dedicate the time to it. There's a lot of material, and it's a short time frame.
It took us about a year to put together all the different components for the Board of Nursing and also for the coordinating board. Well, Hearne Regent had not had a registered nursing program. So we have a need here that wasn't being served. Having this associate RN was really the missing link. We've got a pathway very clearly defined now for our students here in the Valley to go from the CNA all the way to their master's.
Well, one of the reasons we want to go to Raymondville is I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of gaps in Willacy County with some of the students. We have individuals that don't have the GED. We have individuals that do have their GED, but they're not TSI compliant and they're taking remediation. And we have individuals that are attending TSTC, but they can't go to TSTC to get some tutoring and advising because it's just too far. Now we came up with a plan and we said, this is what we can provide. We're offering GED courses during the day. We're offering GED courses in the evening, filled to capacity. We're offering acuplacer academies where the schools are taking advantage of these services. And we have individuals that now are attending TSC and having, instead of going all the way to the library to study, they're going to the Raymondville Center and we're helping with tutor-wise. Because I think that it's the responsibility of the colleges to take those leads, to help out. I'm looking at this time next year, we're probably going to be at about maybe 200 something students attending these programs for various reasons.
We knew the elections were coming up, and we always do some sort of voter registration drive where we invite others to register students. And this time we decided to do it ourselves. We ended up deputizing 46 students to register others to vote.
An actual home or apartment, we can't have a P.O. box.
For young voters like myself, numbers aren't that well just around the country, especially in the Valley. I think it was 2 out of 10 people vote in the Valley, which was a very low numbers.
When our deputies would go out and register a class, students were very excited that it was that easy to just fill out a card and that we would drop it off for them, and then their voter registration card would come in the mail. And we're trying to do the peak hours, which are about 11 to 1, where there's the most students on campus.
I think Adele kind of set the goal for us, and it was our duty to reach that goal. She knew it was a number that would be difficult for us to reach, but a number that we could reach. It was a tough thing to do. It wasn't easy at all. It feels good, though, to know that you reached 1,000 students.
We have no idea how we're going to top this one. This is pretty major as far as civic engagement goes, but right now we're just going to sit back and be happy about what we did and then think about how we're going to do it again in 2016.
Well, Dickey's is celebrating our 90th anniversary this year, and the program that we're launching today is the Tomorrow's Workers sponsored by Dickey's program.
As part of their training in our industry, we use uniforms. It's going to help them relate to when they go to work and the companies hire them. Many companies, they use uniforms. So this way, they're going to be used to the uniforms already when they get hired.
There you go. Yes, 3230. All right.
Today, the students at TSTC Hearne Regent are receiving 5 shirts, 5 pairs of pants, and a pair of work boots to test out during the course of their studies. So our goal with the program is to really find out what they need in workwear.
Being a student, you know, the first year right now in the program, it's a lot of money, a lot of expenses. So getting these free uniforms helps a lot.
It's a great way to test this with a group of 55 to 60 students that can wear our product every day and let us know what's working well for them.
The most important thing that we're trying to get out of this whole activity and this whole event is just you're learning with excitement. It was challenging, but you're actually learning and you're actually innovating and being creative.
I wouldn't call it an engineering task. I think the robotics competition, I think it's more of a metaphor for a working business than it is an engineering firm. Some people don't even know they're good at engineering till they join our club and see what we're doing. After a week or two, they're starting to give us orders and telling us what to do.
In these individuals' eyes, this is their Friday football. Which is exciting, you know, because they're all highly energized, you know, they take it serious and they want to compete and they want to make a difference.
We get a really big following. We could have anywhere from 150 to 200 people supporting us and cheering. We're just making the students in our school and the families proud of what we're doing.
We're hoping that the concept that we introduce to them, they could introduce not only to school but in life itself so they could use it.
And the essence of the program is removing roadblocks between candidates who are already largely qualified and jobs that need to be filled.
This framework is going to allow us to do college-level training in a very fast-track way.
Our first effort with this program will target jobs for the advanced manufacturing and industrial business sectors.
This is something that can change the face of our economy in South Texas rapidly.
Texas is the best place in the world to live and to raise a family and to have a business.
Anybody that's ever met Manny feels like they're close to Manny, and he has such a true gift.
Manny in particular has matured into one of our valley leaders, one of our state leaders. Anything he does it right.
He just has a real belief in public service and the importance of giving back to your community.
Because we're so tightly coupled with all the stakeholders in the community, I want to thank them for their support. They make themselves readily available to us, whether it's someone in higher ed or someone in industry. They're a phone call away in order of calling meetings to support the students and support the economic development of our area. We are changing, and we're changing incrementally as well as in leaps by some of the new programs that we're working on. And over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see even more innovation come out of our packaging of instruction to deal with the needs of the state, industry, and our students. This could be 3 times this length. I just want to give you a snapshot. And I want to thank Regent McKenna for her question, because one of the points that Associate Vice President De Leon made about Raymondville is the outreach in our community. We, unlike other parts of the state, we're not surrounded by a high number of higher ed institutions. So for Harlingen, one of the one-off things that we do, in addition to workforce development, which is our key mission, is provide access. So for many students, and you heard the head of our RN program talk about master's degrees. We don't issue master's degrees, but we make it easy because right across the street is a university center, and you can go across the street and get your bachelor's and your master's in nursing. I believe it was in today's newspaper, there was a front page article about the medical school uses mannequins to do their training. Well, we've got those mannequins here, exact same mannequins. When those medical students today come to Harlingen, they're third-year medical students. Their first 2 weeks they spend at TSTC to learn scrubbing techniques, to learn surgical suturing techniques, very basics. I'm not claiming that we're a medical school, but we're an integral part of what they're doing. And we were already working with the system and their UT system, and they're talking about the infrastructure to support a medical school isn't just nursing. It's biomedical technicians, it's pneumatics, it's mechanics, it's plumbers. It's a whole community that it takes to support the type of endeavor that they're fixing to launch. So we're an integral part of them, of growth of the community. It's fantastic staff that we have, very dedicated administrators. We've got students that you saw today. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you, and I hope you enjoyed it.
At this time, are there any committee chairs that would like to move their consent agenda items to new business? I hear none. We'll move on to approval of the minutes.
Adoption of the agenda.
Okay, we need to have the adoption, excuse me, adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion? So moved. Second. So moved. Second by Penny. J.B. Martin. Make the motion. Seconded by Penny Forrest. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Motion passes. At this time, is there any unfinished business?
Approval of the minutes, sir.
Approval of the minute. I'm sorry.
Approval of the minutes.
We've got these backwards in here. I'd like the approval of the minutes of October 25th. To hear a motion. Gene Seaman moves. Second.
Second.
Joe Hearne seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, is there any unfinished business or we need a discussion?
Consent agenda items.
Thought we did that.
No, we got to do the motion to approve it.
Okay. I'm sorry. Bear with me. I'm open. The chair's open for motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Mr. Hatchel, seconded by Mr. Seaman. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Did we do public comments?
We didn't have any.
We didn't have it. No, nobody signed up for comments. I didn't see any need of going through that.
You want to make a comment?
Would you like to make a public comment?
I just want to know if there's a place to do that.
Yes, there is, but there were none. Okay. Mr. Reeser, did you want to make a discussion on criminal background checks?
Yes, we have an old business item to go over, and I'm going to ask Jonathan Hoekstra to come up and give you a short briefing on where we are on that matter.
Okay. Good afternoon. So during the audit committee section, there was a number of items that Jason mentioned were completed from the follow-up schedule, and one of those was related to our background checks or criminal background checks for dual credit students. And while that has been resolved, we're satisfactorily conducting those things. When we were reviewing that issue, we became aware of some broader issues with respect to minors on campus. And so a few months ago, we asked for some time to more fully evaluate that. And Mike engaged risk management to conduct that evaluation. We're still in the process of fully going through that process. I've recently, the two folks that were working in enterprise risk management went to go work for other parts of our organization, and so we've been restaffing our enterprise risk management department, but they were able to continue working with me on doing this evaluation, but the full implementation, we have continued work to do. Upon looking into the issue, though, we looked at the broader consideration of some compliance risks, reputational risks, and just the general welfare of minors that come on our campus. And we did detect there are additional obligations that we have specifically related to training. And in fact, there are dozens of activities with minors on our campus. So there is definitely exposure and some risks to manage for us. And so we have some recommendations about how to identify the personnel involved with that, reducing opportunities for isolation with those students, and then deploying, getting approval for the training that is necessary. And in addition, we worked with legal counsel on assessing insurance coverage. Should we be insuring for specific types of risks associated with minors on our campus? And the issue of minors being on our campus represents a risk of people tripping and falling. If there's a premises defect, are we obligated, or do we have liability there? And we have insurance that covers that, and we felt like that was adequate. With the issue of sexual molestation or an event like that happening, we looked into the specific insuring of that, and that would actually we're currently covered under our sovereign immunity for events like that, and if we were to purchase additional insurance for that specific event, that would actually put us at risk of losing our sovereign immunity status for those types of events. So we recommend not doing that at this time. So I have a new staff of risk management folks. I'll be introducing them to you in April, and I'm really excited about that. But I'm going to take them on a roadshow to each of our campuses, and we're going to introduce them to our leadership. And as we do that, we're going to work with the campus leadership in talking about how to fully adopt this program for managing this specific risk. So, okay. All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there any new business to come before the board? At this time, the meeting of the TSTC Board of Regents held at TSTC Harlingen, Texas on Thursday, February 7, 2013. After posting and in accordance with Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code for the specific purpose, provided in Sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074, will recess from open meeting into closed meeting at time 3:05 p.m. I would dismiss the public at this time and thank you for attending. The board will now reconvene into open meeting at this time, and it is 3:45 p.m. There being no action taken, Mr. Reeser, do you have any further comments?
Only to express my appreciation to Caesar and his fabulous team for wonderful hospitality.
Penny, you have any comment?
I do not.
Joe, you have any comment? JB? No, sir. John? Mike? Jean? Linda?
Thanks for coming to Harlingen.
Thank you for your hospitality. Is there any further business? If not, the meeting of the Texas State Technological College Board of Regents is adjourned. The next meeting will be on April 18th in Hutto.
April 18th in Hutto.